So this last bullet point, no obvious large regions of silent cortex corresponding to the missing cortical columns were found. In the original article, they say this means that they're not merely passive degeneration of certain neurons. What that means is, because they're only using 2 cats to look at their actual biology in the brain, they're saying if this finding was just down to brain damage, just normal degeneration, then they're saying that they would have found more things wrong. So the cortical columns would have been damaged, so they would have found an awful lot of damage there, but there was no damage. So they're saying it wasn't down to damage, it wasn't just passively just normal reactions to something, it was actually because of the way that they were reared. So yeah, that's what that sentence means. They're putting it down to the environment they were brought up in, not down to some kind of biological abnormality that was there since birth. Okay, so the reason why this is important is essentially it's saying, it's one of the early studies that said, look, our brains aren't just hardwired and static, they are affected by the environment that is around us, and our visual cortex is impacted by the environment that's around us. Those are trees affecting our brains, if you were wondering. So there we go. In terms of the conclusions, if you look in your core guide, what you've got are a summary of what the findings have just said. So visual experiences in the early life of kittens can modify their brains and have profound perceptual consequences. So what they perceive of the world around them is massively impacted by the early experiences, their early visual experiences that have affected their brains. A kitten's visual cortex may adjust itself during maturation to the nature of its visual experience. So when you have essentially the maturing brain, if you impact its visual experience, then the cortex, the actual physical visual cortex, is changing. It's going to adjust. So that's a biological impact of the environment. A kitten's nervous system adapts to match the probability of occurrence of features of its visual input. So again, another biological argument, the nervous system is adapting to match what it thinks the world is gonna present to it. So you could say that, you know, my cats that live up in live in a house with very little prey running around aren't going to have very refined visual cortex compared to a tiger cub that's brought up on the Serengeti, which is very used to hunting and seeing lots of things going on. So the nervous system is adapting to the environment, to the visual input that's around it. What's likely to appear in this visual environment? What's the probability of something coming across you that you want to attack? So that's an important one, because if you take that to humans, then you're saying we only see things that our brains are predicting that we're likely to need, that we're going to need to see. What's the probability of me seeing a vertical stripe? Well, it's very, very slim if I've only ever seen horizontal stripes. Brain development is determined by the functional demands made upon it rather than pre-programmed genetic factors. That is saying brain development is down to nurture, not down to nature. So quite an important claim. The environment can determine perception at both a behavioural and a physiological level, at least in cats. So in other words, the biology of the brain and what you do, bumping into the chair legs. So the behaviour and the biological. It's questionable as to whether results can be generalised to humans. And there we go. That's the study of Blakemore and Cooper. Thanks for listening, folks.